talking about peak performance. And in the next slide, I have a quote that is going to anchor our discussion. And our quote for this session is: the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is that little extra. And the reason why I really wanted to use this quote for our discussion today is because if you are going to be a peak performer, you need that little extra, right? So I hope my presentation today will give you the edge, will give you that extra, so that if maybe you are passing with the 50s, we can, take you to the 60s, take you to the 70s, and eventually, get our cum laudes if there's still a chance to do that, right, team? So in the next slide, let's look into how does our journey for the next 30 minutes look like. Our journey, I'm just going to take some time to get to know you, but also will define what does success look like at the end of this 30 minutes. Once we have defined that, we'll then take time to say peak performance, what is peak performance and how does it really relate to us? And how do we approach peak performance at No-Valo as well? And then at the end, we are going to do one of my favorite things, which is to leave you with practical ways on how you can perform at your peak. And then we will close it off. So that is what success will look like at the end of this 30 minutes. So in the next slide, and the one after that, let's get into really getting to know you. Since you are chatting a lot, I want more of the chatting. So what I would like, team, is that in the next slide, there's a question there where we are asking you, what makes you a peak performer? Let me in. I want to know. Before I even explain to you what, from my perspective as an academic performance coach, from my perspective, what peak performance is, I want to know what currently makes you a peak performer. So let me know. Maybe what makes you a peak performer is the fact that you have a strong support system. Maybe you were just born with it, maybe it's just natural. I don't know. But in the chat, please let me know, because I would love to know what really makes you a peak performer. I'm not seeing anyone chat as yet, but then I'm going to go ahead with the slides and then I will come back to this. So team, in the next slide, as you are telling me what makes you a peak performer, let's align, right? Let's align on what does success look like at the end of this session. Number one, by the end of the session, we have to know what makes one a peak performer. In addition to what you'll be saying, I see Catherine there is saying self-control is one of them. Love that. And then number two, we will then look into what is this framework for academic success. Zanella has been saying academic success for the past 10 minutes. What is this framework we should be considering? Number three, my favorite as well, I want you to be in a position whereby as we are looking into the second semester, you have to know what are the traps you need to avoid in order for you to become a peak performer. And then the practical steps on everything that we have to do to really make sure that we make the second semester a success. So as we go over to the next slide, I'm going to read some of the comments. Let's see. Ooh, I'm loving. Ooh, Virginia said, resilience is what makes me a peak performer. Love. Let's see. Andile said the effort and intention makes one a peak performer. I love that, Andile, because that means you are, a person who puts in the effort. Let's see. Mvelasa said discipline. Love that, because I keep on seeing people saying discipline. Passion. Oh, and Tavilen, that's a good one. Oh my goodness. I really love that. Okay, team. So keep that coming as we are going with our slides. So then as you are keeping them coming, let's get into this slide. So from my perspective, what makes one a peak performer is everything you've mentioned in the chat. But then what we are doing now is that we are putting them into shelves, so to say, and say, you know, all of these things that you're talking about, how do we categorize them? So the first thing is that as a peak performer, you have a focused mindset. What does that mean? That means that you can clear your mind whenever you are studying and be able to direct your mind where you want to direct it, right? And the other element of mindset also means that you can even distinguish the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset, and you know how to steer yourself towards a growth mindset. So that's number one. Number two, it has to do with your emotions, right? Emotional balance. Are you able to manage your emotions? And I love what Manti was speaking about because it comes back here. So when it comes to emotional balance, if you're going to be a peak performer, you are the type of person that realizes that, yes, emotions will come and go. You know, you'll have a day where you don't even feel like studying. You'll have a day where you don't feel like your best, but you'll have a way on how you can deal with these emotions. And also you can take what Manti was saying when it comes to really being able to deal with these emotions. The other one we have here is energy management. Already, you see, this is why I like the fact that Manti came before me, because it's speaking to this, right? So at least here we can just mention them because she already touched on them. And then, you know, I'll be able to tackle all the other things that I have here. So the third one, team, is energy management, right? Because your energy will always go up and down. So are you able to manage your energy? And whenever you are depleted, do you have ways to actually rest and be able to come back up? And then as we look into the other side, skill mastery. If you're going to be a peak performer, you need to be able to master what you are performing at your peak at, right? And now it's your studies as a student that is studying internal audit. So that means you need to be looking at, okay, here are my subjects. And if I'm going to master all of these subjects, what should I be looking at, right? Because I want to be a peak performer. And then definitely optimal health, Manti touched on that. And last but not least, maximize productivity. Because as a peak performer, you know that you can't be at your 100% every time, but then you have ways to get back to being a lot more productive. And also you get to a point whereby you appreciate that at certain times, it's fine also to show up imperfectly, right? So it's part of also maximizing productivity. So that's us, team. So if you understand what peak performance is all about, give me a thumbs up so that I see we are all on the same page on what peak performance is really, really all about. Oh, I'm loving the chats, guys. Please, IIA, please adopt me because I love sessions where people are chatting. Now I want to stay here forever. I don't want to leave. Oh my goodness, I'm loving the chats. I see even Mzukona said a lot there when it comes to peak performance, where Mzukona said, what makes a peak performer is going through my failures, understanding all my pitfalls, my weaknesses and strengths. With that, I was able to identify where I am strong. And Mzukona, you know, said a lot. So please go through the chat so that we see it. Oh, I'm seeing the thumbs up. Look at that, guys. I want to stay at IIA. The chats are really giving me the energy that I love. Okay, so team, then now that we all know what peak performance looks like, let's get into what are the traps that we have to actually know. Let's get into our framework. Let's get into our framework before we get into the traps because our framework is going to link to the traps. So how we approach it at No-Valo is that we say, if you're going to be a peak performer, as you see there in the base, you have to start by really knowing yourself, right? Because Zanele, the peak performer, is not the same as Manti, the peak performer, Tabiso, the peak performer, Odette, the peak performer, Mleboheng, the peak performer. We are all different, right? So it starts with you really getting to know yourself. Secondly, as we see our first pillar there, managing ourselves, right? You have to know yourself and also know how to manage yourself so that you can continuously perform at your peak. Secondly, managing, or rather thirdly, managing your workload. You know yourself, and then you have to get to know the workload that you have and how you can best manage it. And please excuse the dogs outside. For some reason, when I'm speaking, they want to join the choir. They've been quiet the whole day, but now that we are here, I think they are also excited. So please excuse me there. So yes, that's the third one, managing workload, right? And then afterwards, once you have known how to best manage the workload, then we head over to a point where we are saying, in order for you to be a peak performer, you have to know how can you best get ready for your assessment, which is the exam, so that there at the end, you can show up with confidence. So this is the framework for us that really gets you to a point whereby you are a peak performer, because with this framework, we are able to cover all those elements we saw in the previous slide. So now what we are going to do is that we are going to take some of the elements of this framework and then link them to the traps that you really have to avoid. Because if you can avoid these traps, team, I am so confident that you can get to a point whereby you are definitely dialing up and you are getting that extra that's making you extraordinary, and you can get to those marks that you really, really want. And I've seen this with hundreds of students that I have personally coached, and I've had one-to-ones with them. When they get to really dealing with these traps, it helps them with their peak performance, right? So let's go over to the next slide and talk about what is this first trap that we have to avoid. The first trap, team, is the fact that gone are the days where, you know, you get to varsity and everyone says you have to pass well, but you don't even know how to study. How do you even learn best? Like, it's so intriguing because most people keep on saying, no, you have to get a cum laude. No, you have to do all of these things. But no one even bothers to say, how do you learn? Like, can we all talk about, can we take a moment and say, how do we even learn? You're saying I should pass, but how? Where do I start? Right? So we have to get to a point, team, where we know, how do I best learn as a student, and how can I use my strengths when it comes to how I learn, so that I can get to a point where I'm studying effectively and efficiently. But don't worry, I'll tell you how you can do it. Now, just, you know, I'm planting a seed that if you don't know how you best learn, let's start thinking about it. But later, I will give you some tips on what you can do there. Let's get into trap number 2 in the next slide. Second trap is, it sounds so simple. It sounds very, very simple. But most of the times, I feel like 60% of the times, whenever I would have one-to-ones with the students, they will all say, Zanele, I need an action plan so that I can pass. And I say, oh, okay, that's amazing. Let me see your study plan. And in the study plan, 90% of the times, people will have, okay, from morning up until late, I'm studying, you know, this subject, and then this subject, and then this subject, and I don't have to breathe, and then all of these other things. And I would usually ask, I'd say, okay, whenever you are studying this subject, how long does it take you? You know, how long does it take you for you to study a chapter? How long does it take for you to do a practice question, right? Because most of the times when we are practicing an exam question, yes, that already has time with it. But then when you are studying or you are practicing examples, no one is giving you time for that. So do you know how long all of that will take? And in addition to that, regardless of the time it takes for you to study or practice questions, do you know how long it takes for you to shower? Right? Do you know how long it takes for you to eat? Do you know? how long do you need to actually sit and connect with your friends? How many hours do you need to sleep? Do you know how long things last? Because the moment you know how long things last, then you look at time differently. And you look at your workload even more differently. Because now you know that these are the activities that are happening in my life. And you know that, oh, these ones would usually take this time, and this one would need buffer time, and this one would need this one. And the moment you know that, then when it comes to you really being able to manage your workload, it becomes simpler, right? So that's trap number 2. That's what I want you to avoid. And I'm loving that the comments are coming through. I can't wait to get to the comments. But then, team, let's get over to trap number 3. Trap number 3, which is my favorite one. This is our last trap that you have to really avoid if you want to be a peak performer. Trap number 3. Also, 99% of the times that I've had one-to-one sessions, as well as group coaching sessions for academic performance, and I asked the students, okay, what is your study strategy? Are you starting with questions? Are you practicing questions? Guess what happens? 99% of the times, the students would say, no, Zanele, I feel like I still have to read my textbook first. I feel like I have to watch the lecture recordings first. I feel like I have to consult with my friend, my neighbor, call my mom, feed my dog before I can practice questions, right? So all the students would come up with thousands of reasons why they shouldn't be practicing questions, because there's always something else that they have to do before they practice questions. And 80% of the times they'll say, no, but you know what, Zanele? A week before exams, I'm going to have a study break, and that's when I'll practice questions, right? So that's another trap that we all have to avoid. But what I've realized is that so many of us, because, I've had years of lecturing as well, so many of us are guilty, just like we tell you, oh, you have to study, but we don't tell you how to best study and how to best learn. So many of us, we come through and we say, you have to practice questions. You have to sit down and do this and this and this and this. But then we don't tell you the importance of doing it, right? So why is it important for us to get to a point whereby we are simulating the exam experience as soon as possible? Why is it important that we have to practice as many questions as we can? We have 2 reasons why it's important. Number 1 is mainly because of the fact that if you are not learning actively, then you are wasting your time, right? So what do I mean by that? If you are watching your lecture videos, if you are reading your notebook just like this, that is called passive learning. And yes, I mean, it's part of the process, but that is not something that leads you to passing. And there have been multiple studies that have proven that if you're going to be a peak performer, and what differentiates the students who always pass and pass well, and the students that don't pass well, is that the students who pass well, they actively learn. And what does actively learning mean? Actively learning means that you are not just consuming the information, but rather you are always questioning, what am I looking at? What am I studying? How does it link to what I know? All of these other things. And also part of practicing questions is active learning, which is crucial. So that's reason number 1, right? The second reason is that, of which it also links to what Mandy was speaking about earlier on. The second reason is that people forget, but then as human beings, we have a nervous system, right, team? So since we have a nervous system and you have your brain, what happens is that all you are doing each and every day is that you are preparing your brain and your nervous system so that your brain and your nervous system knows what is the difference between danger and something that is not dangerous. Because remember, the reason why we have our brains and we have our nervous system is mainly because they are there to protect us, right? Because as human beings, years and years ago, what would happen? Our brain or our nervous system would tell us that, hey, that is a lion. So now you'll know that, oh, let me run because this is a lion, right? So now the difference is that our brain and our nervous system can tell the difference between a lion and a question that we are intimidated by, right? That's the thing. Our nervous system can't tell that. Our brain can't tell that. So what do we have to do? So our sole responsibility is to prepare our brain and our nervous system so that they know that it is normal to practice a question. It is normal to see a scenario and to see the required and be expected to do something about it when you don't even know, am I going to pass or not? So that's your job. The purpose of simulating almost anything is mainly because you are preparing your brain, you are preparing your nervous system so that next time when you are in the exam, next time when you're doing your assessment, next time when you are doing something similar, your brain and your nervous system knows that this is not danger. It's fine. We are safe. We'll survive and we'll go to the other side, right? So team, that is our last trap that we are discussing. Let me look at the time. Okay, I'm still within the time. So yes, let me see what you guys are thinking about the traps before I go to looking at what are some of the other additional practical steps that you can take so that we can make our way to really being peak performers, right? Let's see. Oh my goodness, I'm loving the chats. Yeah, Matapelo was saying sometimes it's not the subject, but it's all about how you study it. I agree. Michelle said, I'm loving today. I'm loving the speakers. I'm loving everything. We love you too, Michelle. Thank you for being here. Okay, this is good. This is good. Everyone is liking this. Ntogozisi said, the hardest part of studying in the past was learning to study to understand and not studying to copy and oof. Drop the mic. I love what you said there, Ntogozisi, because remember, now as a varsity candidate, no one is paying you to cram it. Yes, metric is fine. You can cram and pass your metric, but then now we are expected to apply what we are learning, team. So I really love this. Zukona said, my mom always teaches me about time management. Love that. She left me at the gym yesterday because I took long. Ooh, I love your mom. I feel like me and your mom can be best friends. Maybe me and your mom are the same age because I'm getting older. Okay, and then Catherine said, this is an eye-opener. Thank you. Amazing. I love that. So team, as I am wrapping up our session, let's go to the next slide and the one after that. Let's go to the next one. Yes, this is our slide. So this is how we are going to wrap up the session because we said we have our No-Valo framework, right, that guides us on how we can become peak performers. And at the beginning, we explained what are the different components that make us peak performers. And then afterwards, I said, okay, team, let's take a step back and look into what are the traps that we really have to avoid if we are going to be peak performers. So now that we've spoken about those traps, then we are saying, okay, what are the low-hanging fruits that we can do straight after the session so that we can avoid those traps and know that we are well on our way to performing at our peak? Practical step number 1, take a learning style assessment. By show of hands, who has taken a learning style assessment? Anyone? I'm not seeing anyone. Okay, so this is a value add team, right? So if you've never taken a learning style assessment, after this session, go online and type free learning style assessment. There are lots and lots of them, and take one, right? Usually it takes about 2 to 5 minutes, and it's going to tell you Do you prefer to learn in a visual manner? Do you prefer to learn in an auditory manner? Do you prefer to learn in a tactile manner, meaning learning by doing? And then it's going to give you tips of, if this is what you prefer, then how are you going to incorporate that within your studies now, right? So that's literally the first thing that you can go ahead and do, right? I'm glad that Mzukona and Matapelo have taken learning style assessment. That's definitely a great start there. And then team, in addition to taking on a learning style assessment, when it comes to learning how to learn and also knowing what mainly works for you, also go back to what I discussed earlier on, where I was saying, what is the difference between passive learning as well as active learning? And are you incorporating more of the active learning whenever you are learning? Because the more you would incorporate the active learning, then what it means is that you are actually doing, you know, the core things when it comes to knowing how to learn more effectively and efficiently. Okay, this is good. I'm seeing the hands in the chat as well. So let's head over. We are not moving slides. We are still sticking to the slide. Number 2, in order for you to be a peak performer, you need to know how to also conduct a time audit, right? What is a time audit? A time audit, now that we are with internal auditors, you guys know what an audit is. So what is a time audit? A time audit is you taking a step back and auditing, how am I spending my time, right? Because you know how even at the beginning of the year, most people will spend so much time making new goals, but they haven't reflected on, how did I do with my goals last year? It's the same thing. If you're going to manage your time well, manage your workload well, know how long things take, then what it means is that it starts with you taking a week, and within that week, just writing from midnight up until the end of the day, how am I spending every hour? Just observing, you know, raising your level of self-awareness. How am I spending every hour? The moment you realize how you are spending every hour, that really shifts how you even do a study timetable, because usually how we think we spend time and how we really spend time, those are two different things. In addition to that, team, in order for us to be able to manage our workload and be peak performers, we have to do what we call an 80-20, which is the Pareto principle. What is the 80-20 rule? The 80-20 rule is where we realize that it's 20% of the things that we do that leads to 80% of the results we get, right? So think about that. 20% of the things that we do leads to 80% of the results. The same way as in your wardrobe, you have 100% of your clothes, but then it's 20% of your clothes that actually give you the 80% of joy. That's why you keep on wearing more or less the same things. That's how it is, right? So now, once you have done your time audit, let's say you do your time audit for an entire week and you see, this is how I'm spending each hour. This is how, you know, I tend to spend each hour. Then you have to get to a point where you say, out of all of these things that I was doing, what are 20% of these things that I was doing that if I dial up on those things, I'll get 80% of the results? And team, this is where you'll see that most of the times it's basically you doubling down on practicing questions, you doubling down on consulting more, you doubling down on really putting on your headsets and really focusing and studying on something instead of pretending to study, because we know what that is as well. So yeah, team, that is the next practical step that you can take, right? And then the last one is simulate, simulate, simulate. But then we are going to take a twist on this one, right? So I'm not just going to say, hey, guys, practice. Because I know we say that as lecturers, right? I'm not just going to say practice, but this is how I want you to think about it. Earlier on, I said the reason why we need to practice the questions or simulate whichever way we are being assessed is mainly because of the fact that we are preparing our minds and we are preparing our nervous system, right? So the best way for us to simulate whichever way we are going to be tested, we are all tested differently. Others, exams are more theoretical, more multiple choice, more calculation, and all of that, right? But then what you need to do in order for you to simulate in such a way that it's taking you a step closer to being a peak performer is that you have to realize that when you are simulating, you are dividing what are my known factors in comparison to my unknown factors. I hope you're taking notes because this is what people pay me for. Now I'm giving it for free today. So team, you have to distinguish what are my known factors and what are my unknown factors when I step into the exam. So when you step into the exam, your unknown factor usually is the exam because you don't know how the exam looks like. You don't know the scenario that they're testing. You don't know the questions that they're going to ask you. That will remain an unknown, and that's okay. So your job is to say, the only thing in that exam room that is going to be unknown will be the exam. But everything else, I'm going to make it known so that I can manage my brain and manage my nervous system. And how do you do that? What you do is that you know how our exam rooms are set up, right? Or whether maybe you are writing remotely, whichever way it is set up. Now you have to challenge yourself that at least once a week, try to have the same setup you would have when you are writing the exam, whether you're doing it remotely or you're doing it in the exam room. Try at least once a week. Try to have the same setup. That means if on your desk, you usually have your highlighters on the right, your calculator on your left, you are wearing a certain type of outfit, you are sitting down on a chair, there's a table. Try to have exactly the same setup at least once a week, right? Because what that does is that your brain and mind don't say, oh, in order for us to study, it's always this nice thing whereby we are just sitting by our bed and we call it studying, right? Because sometimes your brain ends up thinking, this is what studying is and this is comfortable, we love this. And then when you get into the exam, your brain panics because now everything looks different. And then you end up even forgetting everything, overthinking, and then we end up even not performing well. And then you come back and you say, oh, but suddenly I know everything. I don't know why I failed. Most of the times is because our nervous system and our brain, it just turned on us on that day because it said, no, I'm used to studying on the bed and on the couch. Why are we sitting on a chair in a cold room, right? That's what the brain will do, team. That's what the nervous system will do. So your job and your main job every week is to make sure that at least once a week, sit in that uncomfortable place that is mirroring your exam room. Everything has to be the same. Where your highlighters are, where the papers are, everything. And make sure on that day you are timing yourself and you're putting a question that you've never seen before. Because your brain will say, oh, no. When you get to the exam and you've done that even more than 20 times, your brain is going to say, no, this is normal. You know, we wear our track pants, we sit in a cold room, we put highlighters here, we're sitting on a chair, and then every time we have a question where we don't know what's going to happen and we don't know if we're going to pass or not. Your brain is going to thank you because it's going to be like, this is my jam. I do this every week, so let's show up. So yeah, team, these are the practical steps. And I'm glad you are loving them. I see the chat. You guys are loving them. I think you're enjoying it as much as I'm enjoying it, right? It shows I love my job. But yeah, we don't want to be here forever. So let me wrap it up. In the next slide, team, I'm going to wrap it up with our quote, right? So when we started this session, we said the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is that little extra, right? So from my presentation today, I want you to write down, what is that extra thing for you? And I want you to also write it in the chat. What is that extra thing that you took away from this, right? And it can be different. It can be the fact that now you know you have to invest in really knowing how to study, how to learn, or now knowing that you have to do your time audit, or now knowing that you have to look into the 80-20, invest in the 20 so that you get 80% of the results. Or even now, your extra is that you're going to face your fears and actually simulate the exam environment so that you, your brain, your nervous system, you are ready for the exam. So in so saying, thank you, thank you, thank you very much. I enjoyed myself. Like I said, I want to be adopted at IIA because the chats are on fire. So in our next and final slide here, I said, thank you. Remember to stay fearless because No-Valo is no fear. So we are always encouraging our students to stay fearless. Remember to stay fearless. And I hope these, the points that I added here will help you in your journey in becoming a peak performer. Thank you, team.